Episode 29, Cutoffs and Coffee. James and CT, your hosts. As always, today on episode 29, we have Daniel Bach, Jump Science on Instagram and YouTube. We take a deep dive into jumping and the science of jumping, obviously, but we also talk a ton about what's important about developing the athlete outside of the weight room. And this was probably my favorite part about the conversation is, as much as Daniel Bach loves jumping, loves the science of jumping, it is in his name on social media tags, he also talks about developing the athlete outside of the weight room, developing the athlete and their relationships that you have with their coach and the relationship they have with skill development. And it was such an awesome conversation. This is great for parents and athletes alike, anybody interested in not only jumping, but developing themselves as athletes.
And this episode is brought to you by Cutoffs and Coffee gear. We're presenting the Cutoffs and Coffee hat today. You've probably seen us lunging in it recently. Also, if you're bald and need to protect your head from the sun, it is the perfect cover. We have two options: limited release camo, right? And then the traditional all black hat. So if you need a hat to cover up your bald head, maybe you're having a bad hair day, right? Maybe you just need to get the sweat off your brow from doing all those lunges. Grab a Cutoffs and Coffee snapback hat. Hit up Coach CT in his DMs on Instagram, The Real CT, to find your Cutoffs and Coffee gear.
And if you're enjoying the Cutoffs and Coffee podcast, now 28 episodes through, Daniel Bach coming on for 29, feel free to support us by subscribing to the YouTube channel. Follow us on our own individual social medias where we like to tease out the coaches and the guests that we're going to have on. So if you want to ask any questions to these guests or to us for the podcast, you can ask us on our individual social medias. Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcasts. And then continue to reach out to us and let us know who you want to hear. So 5 stars, subscribe, let us know who you want to hear, who you want to talk to. Let us know if you're enjoying the podcast. And if you are, continue listening. We appreciate everybody's support. So without further ado, episode 29, enjoy it with Coach Daniel Bach. Coach Daniel Bach, Cutoffs and Coffee. Welcome, man. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Looking forward to getting into some stuff here.
We appreciate that. Hey, Coach did not have cutoff on. He saw us, he saw the pipes, he saw his shoulders. He said, hold on a second, let me go get my best cutoff. So if you're watching the YouTube video, you'll be able to see Coach Daniel Bach with his cutoff on. Coach, you put out a lot of well, that's one thing, maybe round 2, maybe we'll bring you on later round 2, and then we'll do it post pump. That would be
there we go.
Situation. And then how many subscribers would we get from that? Geez, Daniel Bach, James DiBiasio, CT with a pump. Come on. Hey man, let's start off here. You put out a ton of awesome content on YouTube, ton of awesome content on social media. And if you search Daniel Bach, you search Jump Science, you get a lot of information. So obviously you're putting yourself out there for people to learn a lot about you. We'd like to know, as listeners and as hosts, something that is good to know about you that we can't find from just a Google or an Instagram search.
I guess probably go the comedic route here. My senior year of high school, during basketball season, my close friends decided to give me hopefully it was a sarcastic nickname called, I was the mattress, because I was so soft on the court.
Oh no.
And they tried to actually bring a mattress to a game and bring it into the stands, but it was not allowed. Yeah.
Oh,
if you don't have friends like that, you need to go out and get you some. That is awesome.
Yeah, right. they got to keep you humble,
Absolutely.
Daniel Bach, aka the mattress, couldn't fit a king size into the gym doors, I guess, huh?
Not so much. Well,
dude, what was it? What was the skill set that you were lacking? Was it just like size and strength, and you were just getting pushed around down there on the block? So you decided to learn how to jump over all of them?
It was more or less the opposite. I mean, I thrived in the paint. I was a physical player. It was even I was 6'3", so I was definitely facing some larger guys, but I was quicker and could out jump them, and I didn't give any ground to anybody on defense. So no, I was not a soft player.
Boom, here we go. Hey man, tell us back us up from the pre-mattress days. Talk us through your story. Tell us, what happened. Tell us about your playing career, and tell us when you got into coaching, and basically like wrap us up where you are now and what you're doing now.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I did a variety of sports as a kid, mostly not organized, but like, solid neighborhood sports, like tackle football, no pads kind of thing, like, the game 500, all that stuff, biking, rollerblading, all these things.
What a
By
great
the
way
time
to
I
put
was
it. I don't mean to interrupt you. I've never heard it put that way. Just classic neighborhood sports.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
awesome. Yeah, because you said 500. Oh man,
Pickle between two trees.
Yes, like, dude. Thanks for bringing the flag.
Culdesac crew.
If you don't know these games, you're too young to be listening to this podcast.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Coach. Sorry, I won't interrupt you anymore.
So by the time I was 12, I was pretty obsessed with basketball, and just playing a lot in the alley and stuff like that. And then just, I had my little middle school season every year or whatever. When I was 13, as part of my obsession with basketball, I wanted to jump higher. And I had an older brother, and, he was like grabbing the rim or whatever. And I was like, man, I want to do that. And I started dunking on a low rim in the driveway. And then I got access to some old school weights that I had in my basement. So, like the little 1-inch thick bar and the cement plates, and the little, the clip you have to crank on and off, like that style of weights. And I started doing squats and calf raises in my basement. And that was a 5 days per week routine for me, the lifting. And then, whatever jumping and basketball I was doing. And I started seeing some really fast results in my vertical. And so I got hooked on it, kept rolling with it. And, by the time I was 14, I dunked, and I had added probably a foot to my vertical within a year. So it's pretty dramatic. And so that was obviously, at that time I was like, well, I'm going to just have a 6-foot vertical in a few years, it's a real simple process.
Uh-huh.
Obviously found out it wasn't that simple. But I got kind of hooked on that training process then, and I continued to try to explore how to jump higher in the years following that. And by the time I was 15, late 15, 16, I was touching the top of the box on the backboard. I had explored kind of the plyometric realm. I think I had a very different routine by the time I was 15. I remember instead of 5 days per week, I was doing 2 days per week. And it was still squats and calf raises, but now I was jumping with a bar on my back. I was jumping up the stairs in my house and then like sprinting down them and doing it again. Still obviously, getting on a hoop and dunking, stuff like that. And so I had another stretch where I gained like maybe 6 inches on my vertical within a couple months when I was 15, in conjunction with a growth spurt, of course. And when I was 15, I already like wanted to be a trainer, because I had been through this experience, and I thought it was so cool the way you can like change your body doing this. And so I already kind of had a career path in mind at that age. As far as the basketball career, so I had, honestly, until my senior year, I wasn't a special player at all. I ended up being I was an all-conference player my senior year, but not a lot of efforts to get exposure or pursue college really. There was like one school nearby, Carroll College, is near Milwaukee. Milwaukee's where I grew up. That like actually recruited me, wanted me to come play for them, but it was like not nearly good enough of a school academically for me to make that sacrifice in exchange for being able to play basketball. I actually went to Baylor for 1 semester, and came down to Texas back then and had a great experience. But between money and then I had decided I wanted to play basketball again, Ended up going back to Wisconsin and walked on at a D3 school there. And it was also a school that had a really good exercise science department, so that worked out. The funny thing from Baylor, actually, so there at the rec, I got the nickname the Terminator. So very different than the mattress. Polar opposites there.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. So I ended up playing 1 year D3 ball at UW-La Crosse. And then, before my second year, I was broke, I had to pay rent. So I just, it's like, coach, I got to get a job. I'm sorry. But then I got back into jump training at that point. So I started training myself again. And then shortly after, started working with some, like a couple friends. And then, there were some results. So then some other people got interested. I ended up with like a little jump training squad on campus. And that's really that's when I started posting YouTube videos, started, interacting with people online. They were asking me questions, and I obviously was not that knowledgeable at the time, but I could help some people out. And made a little blog, started posting articles, stuff like that. And so that was kind of the origins of jump science. Was that. And then, so yeah, I finished college, got my exercise science degree, continued to train people through, the last 4 or 5 years of that. I spent 6.5 years getting my undergrad degree. But I ended up working with like a local high school basketball player, working with some track athletes at the school at UW-La Crosse. At one point, the basketball coach had me run the preseason conditioning for the basketball team. And this was, I was still an undergrad student, so it's kind of a unique situation there.
Yeah, that was the same team you played for.
Yes.
But are no longer
playing. So it was my former coach, but then he knew I was doing this jump training thing. He's like, "Hey, do you want to come help out with the fall conditioning for the team?" So I kind of had a variety of experiences there. There was a basketball skills trainer in La Crosse, Wisconsin that I hooked up with and did some work with. I did some things, kind of some random things in that department. But I finished college and I didn't have much of a plan. I still, I had the online stuff kind of slowly growing into something, but I didn't really have anywhere to go. So I ended up spending a year back in Milwaukee before somebody was actually on my website down here in Texas. And he used some information for his son, and it helped him out. So then he emailed me, we started talking, and then he ended up saying, "You should come check out this place called Xceleration down here." So came down, met the owner, and a few weeks later, he offered me some work. So that's why I moved down to Austin, Texas. That was in June 2014. So I've been here since then, 7.5 years now. And so the place here is speed training focused. It's called Xceleration. And speed training is what we're known for. It's obviously, we train all athletes, and, the like volleyball and basketball athletes tend to come to me because of my jump training background. But Xceleration has given me the chance to really explore and get good in the speed department as well, and learn a lot of things in that department, and then get to work with some more track athletes, which is now actually my preference, because track it's committed to just getting more athletic. That's the sport. There are skills involved still, but it's like people are just trying to run fast and jump high, and they'll spend an entire year doing whatever they need to do to make that happen. It's a lot different than basketball players who have 3 hours of skill work they want to do every day, or even football obviously is a good physical development sport, but it's conditioning, it's team stuff, it's we got to gain 30 pounds, all these other things going on. So I really like to train track because it's dedicated to speed and athleticism.
And I think with track and field, you also have that predictability of when your events are.
Yes.
So, in football season, you got to be ready every week. in track and
Right.
field, you have certain events that you want to either qualify for other events for. So it's a more singular focus in terms of when you want to be at your best.
Yeah, it's all a process building up to those key meets. Yep.
What's your setup at your facility in terms? Are you seeing one-on-one clients? Are you seeing small groups, large groups, a little bit of
all one-on-one?
Okay,
all one-on-one.
awesome.
Yep. We used to have a little bit of a small group for track because they didn't have a track class period at school, so they would come for fourth period. The local school, Lake Travis, they would come to us for like their fourth period, basically. And but then they eventually got a track period at school, so that went away. So yeah, it's all one-on-one.
So you have a lot of playing experience in your sport. You started coaching kids pretty much while you were still playing, coaching peers when you were in college, and then you also had a good experience with yourself being able to dunk at 14. I'm 32 now. I'm still working on that. Not gonna happen anytime soon. But as you're going through that process, did you have any moments, especially studying exercise science, plus you had that iron education, training yourself for a while? Do you have any paradigm shifting moments that kind of made you think differently about how you train or how you coach the athletes that you're in front of today?
So, yeah, I don't know about a paradigm shift, more like a kind of gradual understanding that, at one point was kind of like a light bulb understanding. Early on in my experience, I did come across the benefit of resting. And I recall I think I want to say like age 15, there was some times where I had gotten back onto my 5 days per week lifting routine. But I had like a vacation coming up. So I just doubled my routine for a week, knowing that I was going to have to take a week off. And so, at age 15, I was already like running experiments like that, which is just kind of odd. But yeah, so I had some of these experiences also, after basketball season would end, I would just like take a week off. And then I would always jump really well following that. And then when I started training people early in college, I had, some of those same experiences, like, somebody works out for a while and then they stop for whatever reason. And then like a couple weeks later, they're like better than they were before. I had my one friend, Chris, who we would lift pretty hard, like starting week 1. And he had some really good results, like in his first 6 weeks. I mean, he had never lifted weights before. It was bound to happen. But then he kind of leveled off, and then he went home for Christmas break. And then, somewhere along the line during Christmas break, he just like his vertical shoots up. And then we comes back in January, we go again. And again, like started out pretty hard week 1. And he didn't really gain a lot while we lifted, which is, I mean, I guess, one of the shifts is just like, oh, we should actually lift a lot easier. Well, that was one of the shifts. But then, so he lifted a whole semester hard and didn't perform poorly, but also didn't really get better at jumping. And then goes back to Milwaukee for the summer. He's just like playing basketball a few times a week. And then at some point, one day he shows up to the court and he just like jumping 3 inches higher, so I kind of had this idea, like we need some rest at some point. I didn't understand it. Then at some point, later in college, I came across Verkhoshansky's material and his super compensation curve. And I read a story about him doing research with strength training with track athletes, and he was training them hard, and he actually made all their performance drop. And this was for a study. And then one of them I guess, I don't know how many were female. One of them got pregnant, dropped out of the study, but he kept monitoring her performance. And like weeks after she had dropped out of the study, her performance shot up. And so then he just did that with the rest of the subjects, and all their performance shot up. And then, this was like one of his big career moments. So I was like, oh, so someone's done this before. I hadn't heard about it in my strength and conditioning education at all, but someone's done this before. So yeah, basically understanding that rest concept of train hard, but then you need a certain amount of compensation of training easy for a little bit. And over the years, I've come to understand it more. I think at that time, the main mechanism at play was fatigue and recovery. And now I've come to understand, okay, there's fatigue and recovery. There's also negative adaptations to some training that maybe you need to get to fade away, right? So if we deep squat every week for 4 months, it's good for us in a sense because it makes us generally stronger, but there's also some piece of that is probably negative for, let's say, maximum velocity sprinting. And so it's not just a matter of resting then, it's also a matter of, well, let's shift our training to be, some would say more specific. But yeah, just to be more focused on the athletic end of the spectrum. And then we get, it's not just fatigue and recovery, it's actually we're shifting our adaptations to be more targeted for our performance. So yeah, I would say that's kind of like the big topic that sort of just kind of gradually been enlightened on over time. Yeah, that's the one that comes to mind.
You made a lot of really good and interesting points there. And I think if you're listening to this, and just like us three, we've all probably overtrained and done too much at times. So it's hard for us to kind of look back and say less. But that's when I was watching a lot of your stuff, I was really learning a lot about kind of that like accumulated fatigue, changing specificity of training. How are you able to take your athletes, right? Like we mentioned basketball players, right? Who are working, they're on the court 3-4 hours a day. Then they come in and do a strength session. Then they want to come in and do a jump session, and they're never really able to make progress on any of them. How are you able to kind of take this idea of fatigue and rest and put that into either their training programs or the conversations that you have with them on a daily basis? What do those conversations kind of look like?
Yeah, so it's definitely, as far as the people I work with in person, it definitely is about the conversations, because I don't get to program with them. They do too much other stuff, and they're not coming to see me multiple times per week generally. So it really is about that, the talking to them and trying to get them to understand, hey, if you have practice Monday through Friday, practice or a game Monday through Friday, if you take Saturday, Sunday off, it's a good thing. Like you don't have to go play hours of pickup on Saturday. You'll actually feel better in practice on Monday and be more athletic if you don't do that. Yeah, so in definitely in the basketball context, I'm not trying to implement some long-term super compensation plan. It's not possible. It's more, okay, here, we need to, usually with basketball, we need to get stronger. Get stronger relative to body weight. We need to build up some structure so that, these things don't hurt anymore. And along the way, we're just going to try to, get rest when we can. And that's about as far as it probably goes with basketball. I don't know if I've ever had a basketball player who was like, you know what, man, you've been lifting too hard, too much for too long, and you need to get away from it.
Right.
That is not the basketball issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is just about, okay, having the every time I see him, there's the check-in. Okay, have you eaten enough today? Did you eat enough yesterday? What's that been going like lately? What have you had to do at school? Have you done any workouts outside of that? Okay, so this is what we're going to do today. You know, I think there's a little room for us to get this work in. And then can you get tomorrow off? You know, if tomorrow's Sunday, can we just like chill for a day? Yeah, so it's kind of that, just every time you see them checking in on those things, trying to encourage them to not overwork themselves and to instead overfeed themselves. And yeah, so it's just trying to encourage that behavior modification, but it's not an advanced programming thing by any means when it comes to really most of the athletes I work with in person, because they're all doing a lot of other stuff, and they're not necessarily gonna they're not on a committed 3 times a week seeing me type of schedule. So it's less about programming and more about building that relationship and trying to get them to, you know, just understand some things that can help them.
That would have been, James, maybe a better name for the podcast. Cutoffs and Coffee is sweet, but if it's less about programming and more about the relationships. I think that's the point that we're really trying to push with all these conversations we have. So I very much appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah, cool.
I want to hear what a day looks like in Daniel Bach's life, from, you know, what you do personally, and then also your training. You put out some really cool content with a friend of the show, Tim Riley. So shout out to Tim. He's the one who first, you know, mentioned your stuff and wanted to connect us. And you guys have both put out on your social medias basically like training days with each other. And I think that's I think that's awesome when coaches are able to get together, feed off each other, push each other, something that he and I do a ton. What does a day in the life look like for you? And then also for kind of an athlete who comes in and sees you over there at Xceleration?
So for me, yeah, I mean, I work with the kids like in the after school hours. So normally mornings to, you know, mid-afternoon is pretty free. So I mean, I can work out a lot. I got the hours. So I tend to, yeah, I mean, on a given day, I'm hoping to be jumping or running in some form. You know, so I just turned 34, but I'm still trying to cling to the, you know, let's be fast and light and explosive. Like, you know, I want to keep that around. So yeah, running or jumping in some form, plyometrics, like it's all on the table. Yesterday, I randomly did a little parkour challenge. You know, I was running up there's two walls of granite rocks, and I was like trying to run off the one onto the other.
Yeah.
It was very not smooth, not a practiced movement for me by any means. But yeah, so something like that, and then just general strength training, squatting, deadlifting, lunging, pistol squatting, a little bit of pushing and pulling in the upper body. But yeah, do something athletic and then try to get strong. Those are my usual approaches. Then the kids I train, you know, that varies a lot based on what they have going on. But really, I'm trying to hit the same categories, right? It's like, let's do athletic things and let's get stronger. It just, you know, in some cases, they might be so trashed from what they've had to do already that modifies things a lot, where it's like, all right, so we little bit of like easy plyometrics. Maybe we're doing a 5-yard sprint, looking at some mechanical things in the start, or maybe we're just getting in a few like 10-yard resisted reps, something like that. If you know, if they've already run a whole bunch that week, and then some of them lift, you know, twice a day, like football off season. You know, that you'll get guys that lift in the morning and after school 5 days a week. And so then lifting's not a focus, but maybe, okay, well, they missed lower leg training, so we're going to do that. They actually, yeah, you know, they squatted, benched, cleaned, but they did nothing for their hamstrings. Okay, so we'll do some of that, et cetera, et cetera. Just trying to fill in those little gaps that they're missing. Then there is the case of, I guess, you know, track is the most common one where, oh, they actually they haven't done much outside of here. We're sort of starting with a blank slate. So now, okay, well, let's warm up, we'll, you know, maybe put a little jumps into the warm up, we'll get the juices flowing, but now we're going to the track, we're trying to run 60s. You know, we're trying to sprint fast today and get some work in. And then we're trying to go to the weight room, and we're starting from scratch. So it's like, we got to hit the squat, we got to hit the deadlift, and then try to build up structure. So calves, adductors, hip flexors, all these things, core work. And so then it's more of a comprehensive workout, where, yeah, we're trying to, you know, move the big rocks, so to speak. And yeah, so in that case, I tend to try to schedule extra time for those people, because they actually need more work. And then yeah, some of the other ones, it's like, we don't even need our 60 minutes, man, honestly. The amount of stuff you've done already, you might actually, you know, if we could just go up the road, get you some barbecue, that might be a good spend, you know, a good usage of our time here. So yeah, it varies a lot depending on what the athlete's going through at the time, all the demands that they have on them. But yeah, basically just trying to fill in the gaps for them athletically as well as strength wise.
Dude, what a good point. Because I've said that before, you know, like, oh, I'm tired. Well, you would have a better outcome if you went and napped for 60 minutes than if you came in here and trained. And
Yeah.
you know, every coach thinks they got the perfect 6-week whatever undulating program to peak, until you get an athlete who comes in and is like, yo, I was just playing pickup basketball for 3 hours after school and I'm trashed.
Yeah.
And then you got to figure out what the heck to do to be able to give kids benefit from coming in, because people are paying for your services, you know, so you can't just keep drilling them into the ground. You got to listen to them, and you got to have those conversations. And that's so awesome that you bring that up. I want to get a little more into the jump science stuff. We know a little bit about you. A lot of people know your content on social media, and if you don't, Jump Science on Instagram, Jump Science on YouTube, a lot of really good stuff. I mean, I think I watched videos from maybe 8-10 years ago that you put on YouTube that were super popular. So that's really cool, man. You've been doing it at a high level for a long time. Tell us about Jump Science, and tell us about the principles of Jump Science, and kind of why you talked about the creation of it, but why this is such a big part of your life here.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, the origins, like I said, we're just starting to post things online. The name didn't come for a few years. And I don't remember, like, as far as I remember, it just popped into my head one day. I mean, it wasn't like I put a whole lot of thought into it, but it really works because it's science-based approach to jump training, or like a thinking man's approach to jump training. You know, it's not hype. It's not do cool looking exercises to get likes on Instagram. You know, it's like the polar opposite of that, actually. It's like, no, we're actually going to do the most boring thing because that's what you need. So yeah, principles, I would say, I mean, there's a lot of things to talk about, but some of the big ones would be, so one, specificity, but it's what I would call enlightened specificity, where it's, okay, specificity means whatever you're training for, you need to do it. You need to practice it a lot. You need to build up a background of doing it. And understand that itself is training. And that develops physical qualities. You know, it's not just skill. Like if you go and and you have a dunk session and you dunk 30, 40 times, even if it's on a low rim, let's say you're a beginner, it's a low rim. Like you're training explosiveness, you're training coordination, you're training balance, you're training elasticity, all these, all these words that we need. It's like, these terms that we use for physical qualities we need. You develop that by dunking, right? Or by sprinting, like that is training. So if you're a sprinter, and people talk about short contact times, and you need to, we need to make your contact time shorter as you get faster, right? You don't have to search for an exercise to do that. Sprinting is that exercise, right? And even if you're a jumper and sprinting is a complementary thing for you, sprinting is that exercise for short contact time. You don't have to come up with some creative thing in order to train yourself to get off the ground fast. Sprinting is the thing. So that's one principle. And then the other principle would be, or the other one that I have in my head here is outside of that activity, outside of your sport, your training should not be specific, because the whole point is you're trying to get something that's different than your sport. And so that's where, you have to understand the general versus specific quality or nature of like the different physical qualities. So for example, skill is not a general quality. If I need to learn, let's just say, basketball defensive skill, I don't go snowboard because it's like a similar stance. And, like the snowboarding skill is not going to translate to basketball skill. It's not, skill is very specific. Whereas something like strength is not as specific. It's very, and to be clear, we're talking about maximum strength. So in the sports training world, we have like max strength, explosive strength, speed strength, all these different strength, reactive strength terms that people use. I'm talking specifically about, maximum strength, or even like, structural strength, I would say, like hypertrophy. This is largely a general quality, where if I get stronger in a squat, it's going to make me stronger in a lot of different ways, not just in the squat. And that's the case for a lot of lifts. Like if I get better at deadlifting a barbell, I'm probably going to get also better at like throwing a medicine ball up in the air. There's a lot of transfer there, because strength is more of a general quality, and understanding that is, one of those key things that I try to help people with, for getting a grasp on training. And then, you could talk about elasticity, you could talk about explosiveness, you talk about coordination, there's all these different physical qualities. And I get, like, one of the other things that I try to push is you want to do things that directly target those qualities, and, find the things that are best for that and do them. Don't do the fancy nonsense stuff, and don't try to combine everything like, oh, this is a combo lower body, upper body strength / balance exercise. Like, no, it's trash is what it is. You're not actually developing anything, because you're taking away from the stimulus that could develop something. So those are some of the principles. And then I guess resting is another one of the big principles that I try to push, which I've already talked about. So before I rant too much, I'm just going to shut that down right there.
No, I think you made a great point about sprinting, and I think communicating to athletes is kind of where we can sneak in extra sprint work. And one thing that I'll do is, if I want to run 10 20s, I'm going to come up with 4 different start variations that we're going to do. And they didn't realize they just ran 10 really intentional sprints. They thought they did 4 different drills 2 times. And I think that's like the athletes that we see, right? We kind of got to meet them where they're at, because we can't just tell them, hey, I need you to run maximum intent. We're going to run 10, 20-yard sprints. they'll be like, oh man. But if you're like, hey, jump off this box and then sprint 20 yards, they'll be like, okay, sweet, I'll do that. How are you able to do that with an online, training program, because you don't get that one-to-one interaction? How do you build that culture with your online platform that, obviously you've done so well with it? Most of our athletes got excited. They're like, oh yeah, nice, man. Jump science. Yeah, we follow that.
Right. Well, I would say in the jumping realm, dunking is like, that's the fun thing, and that's how you mask the work. Is you don't think about, oh man, I have to jump 40 times. Like, no, dude, you're trying to dunk. Like, this is fun. I would say I haven't really tried to implement with sprinting masking the work. Like in the jump science program, it's like, okay, 5 40-meter sprints, it's just in there. It's definitely something I intend to do in the speed science program, which will eventually be made.
Nice.
Yeah, I actually so I have some people that I do individualized programming for. And there's one guy in particular who his start is not very fast compared to the rest of his race. He's a 100-meter sprinter. And I actually put fun sprints in his program lately, or what I call fun sprints. And it's you have to either race somebody or you have to be chasing a ball. And so me and Tim actually filmed some clips for the instructional video on that the other day, and a couple of them are in the Instagram post I made. You're starting in a different position. Someone tosses a ball out for you. You're trying to catch it on the first bounce. So there's hopefully no thinking. It's pure instinct. And you're just trying to get to the ball as quickly as you can. And then it's from different, it's from the different stances, which are, it's not a block start. So it's not a rehearsed position. It's a problem-solving situation. So yeah, I actually love how you talk about mixing up the type of sprint that people do. Yes, to this point, with the online stuff, I haven't implemented that well, which I think it's a challenging thing to implement when you're writing a program for the masses. For anyone to just pick up and do. It's like, well, what is anyone going to be able to do in this department? If you say, hey, you need to race people, then you're going to get the email like, hey, what if I don't have a partner? Like I've been through that where it's like, I would like to have these things in here, but this is just going to generate a million questions for me, and a million people who can't really implement, like Olympic lifts in a weightlifting program. Hey, I don't have the equipment. I've never done this before, blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, okay. So we're just not going to use Olympic lifts in the program. When you're making it for the general public. But yeah, I guess in the sprinting realm, I haven't done that yet on the online stuff very well.
I want to revisit something that you just talked about briefly with like throw the ball, solve a problem. And I immediately thought like, that's the Culdesac kids. That's back to the neighborhood games. That's back to having fun as a kid. And I really hope that the kids that I get to be in front of have fun with their training. And, I just like, cause that's what I experienced when I was growing up. That's what you experienced when you were growing up, and you're passing that down to that, next generation of like, yo, this is fun. This is supposed to be fun. What are some of the fun things that you do get to do in person? Cause like, that's a different dynamic than online. And I can definitely see that's a hill to climb. But like, how do you gamify some of your sprint training in person or jump training outside of just low rim? What are some of the ways you mix things up?
Yeah. So one point I want to make is you do have to consider if people play a sport, they sort of already have the fun component. So, when they come to see me, I don't want to overdo that. It's like there is this component of, well, yeah, we already, you already played a sport a bunch this week. You already had fun. You already did instinctive things. We need to do some like targeted things. But definitely Definitely, I still try to use that. And I would say I use it in the kind of, again, it's the filling in the gaps athletically department where, okay, I have a volleyball player who only jumps off at 2 feet and then just like, shuffles around or like lunges around the court to try to, get to the ball here and there, like pretty limited set of movements. And if you take a volleyball player and you say, hey, I want you to go jump off one leg and try to touch that, they struggle a lot of times to even execute the jump, much less jump high. They might not even be able to do it. They'll go into it saying, I'm going to jump off one leg. They'll end up jumping off two anyway. Then they find a way to jump off one, but it still looks like their volleyball approach, like the timing of the arms and everything. And so it's it's not an effective jump. So I'll do things like just go jump over something, which I usually, for safety purposes, I'll just like hold a little like a jump rope or like a little strap out. And so if they happen to come up short and miss it, it's, I have this loose grip in my fingers and it comes out and there's no risk of injury. I have had people like just go over a hurdle before. We have like some really light, dainty hurdles that, you have a hard time hurting yourself on them. So jumping over stuff is definitely one. And that's where I'll say, okay, what's the jump that you suck at? What's the jump that you've never done in your sport before? Let's do that. Let's like fill in that gap. So yeah, jumping over stuff, definitely. If I have the basketball guy who's tall, can jump a little bit, like dunking has historically been a thing. Like, let's go try to dunk. Oh, you've never done this before? Let's try to do that. So it's, and it's an exploratory session, doing something different than they're used to doing. But then, yeah, you're getting work in the process. And then, yeah, in the sprint realm, I do the ball chasing pretty regularly. We do occasionally, if we have two people working out at the same time, we'll have them race, and that's good. And yeah, we'll do the race from the different positions. So again, it's that problem solving instinctive thing. And yeah, you do not think about the work you're doing if you're racing your friend. It doesn't even occur to you. It's like you do the 10 or the 20-yard race, and then they're like back on the line, they're ready to go again. It's not an issue. So yeah, I would say competing or chasing the ball are kind of my go-tos. I have done stuff with med balls where you have like the med ball push start or like the underhand throw start, and it's like, all right, you have to throw the med ball past the 10-yard line when it lands. You also have to touch it before it hits the ground a second time. So you have to throw it far, but you're also sprinting behind it to go touch it before it hits the ground again. And then also in the med ball throw department, just doing that for fun, where it's, maybe you don't have the sprint, but it's all right, you have to throw it past this line, or you have to hit that steel beam in the ceiling. Those are ways to, yeah, again, you're masking that work. It's just fun. And it's kind of experimental. Like, I'm not coaching med balls much, like the mechanics of it. It's more like, yo, you got to put some oomph into that thing, So yeah, those are some of the ways I try to do that.
I got to apologize. I got to mute myself every time I go to laugh, man, because I'm just laughing at this microphone. You got away with words, Daniel, that you were like, what you said earlier, you're like, no, that's not jump work. That's trash is what that is. I mean, it's straight up just like, people got to understand. So I got to mute this every time I go to laugh, man. You're cracking me up, which I appreciate. So a little less structured with the jumping and the pre-weight room stuff. Are we more structured when we get into the weight room? I know you've talked a lot about, heavy back squats and how much you love those and Nordics. Are we a little more structured for the jump training and the performance training when we get in the weight room? And if we are, what does that kind of stuff look like?
Yeah, definitely more structure there. Because, there I'm more like just ruthless, it's a dedication to fundamentals and a dedication to training your weaknesses, and then, trying to build up structure, particularly, in common problem areas for that sport. So, yeah, it's definitely looking at the squat for sure. Again, it's depending on what else people have going on. I may not actually be doing squats, or maybe when I first start with somebody, let's squat with the bar to see what it looks like and see if there's any adjustments you can make. So I'll do that a lot with like football guys or like lacrosse guys that are already lifting, but it's like you just know they're not doing it well. When someone comes in and tells you they squat 3 plates, I'm like, what does that look like? But yeah, it's like, I guess the fun does kind of go away to some degree with the strength training. It's more like, look, you need this desperately. And so we're going to do 6 sets of 5 squats, like, I'm sorry, but it's happening. And then, I complement the squat with either hip or knee extension focused work based on the hip or knee dominance of the athlete. That's definitely a thing that I look at pretty consistently now. If you got someone who gets all bent over in their squat and their bar shifts forward, and so they're kind of taking load off their quads and using their glutes and back primarily, then I'm definitely want to complement that with some knees forward upright stuff, like either that style of split squat or a pistol squat where you can manipulate. Like, definitely there's a lot of shifting in a pistol squat, but like it's still very quad focused. Or we recently got a hack squat machine, which you probably saw me and Tim on that thing. Very knees forward, quad focused. So I like to complement the squat with something to target that weakness. But then I also have knee dominant people, which they do upright squats naturally, and you can see, you can even identify that in other ways, like they'll get sore in their quads from squatting, whereas somebody else will get sore in their glutes, or they'll squat more than they deadlift. And to me, like, I'm a naturally hip dominant person. To me, that's just like such a bizarre thing. Like, like I can deadlift like 150 more pounds than I can squat. It's like not even close. They'll squat more than they can deadlift. They have athletic characteristics as well. They'll bounce off the ground easily on one leg if they're knee dominant, but their sprint start and their broad jump, when they're trying to get horizontal projection, if they're lacking hip extension, that they'll be relatively poor in those things. So with them, it's like, okay, we squat, but now, all right, we're also going to deadlift or sumo deadlifts. We're going to try to do like a glute focused split squat. We're going to go leg press and put the feet high on the plate to try to get mostly glute loading out of that. Maybe we're going to hip thrust even. Although I would say a lot of the people that struggle with this, like, one of the reasons that they lack the hip extension is that they're tight in the glutes and hamstrings. And so I tend to go with like full range, trying to make them sore, trying to stimulate sarcomerogenesis in the muscles. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Oh yeah. And I think everybody listening obviously knows what that is.
I'm trying to make those muscles longer with the strength training. So then I tend to go for those full range things versus a hip thrust. And then pretty consistently, let's do some calf work, let's do some hip flexor work, let's do some medial shin stuff to try to prevent shin splints. Let's get a little adductor in there, trying to cover all those bases structurally so that we can try to stay healthy, as well as possible. Because a lot of these kids, man, they're just going through a lot of stuff, and I'm just like, your poor muscles and connective tissue, like what can we do to help you survive what's going on right now?
Now, as a young coach, hearing these concepts, that's a really good thing for a young coach to start paying attention to. And you've been in the game for, 8+ years, maybe, including your time in college, like over 10 years. You intuitively can see an athlete walk into your gym for the first time and kind of identify that athlete as he's probably going to be quad dominant, he's probably going to be hip dominant. As talking to a young coach, what are those eye line sights that you built that intuition on that you can kind of see, through their movements?
So, I mean, I would say the easy one to spot is the style of the squat, or even the style of the split squat. If somebody doesn't like to move their shins forward, they like to stay closer to vertical, and then they like to bend their torso over more, then, in fact, you can even look at shin angle, torso angle, right? Like if those things are parallel, they're probably pretty well balanced, or even maybe a little bit knee dominant. If they're shins vertical, torso bent over, they're weak at the knee. That's pretty reliable identification right there. You do have to consider the ankle mobility when it comes to the squat. I'm always doing heels elevated squats, so I kind of take that out of the picture. But yeah, you do have to consider that. I mean, if someone's on flat ground, like maybe their knees don't go forward because they just don't have the mobility. It might not be a quad strength thing.
Well, and we've seen it too with even elevating an athlete's heels, and they still fight as hard as they can to keep those shins vertical. So like those patterns, like they'll fight to try and stay vertical, even though you're giving them an environment that will let them access a different range of motion, a different muscle group. So I think like coaching through that, Tim Riley really helped give us a couple tips and tricks to help athletes get to a better depth in those. But those are really good things to look out for.
Yeah, I remember I posted something years ago about the bar shifting forward in a squat, and I was talking about how that'll happen in a front squat, even though it's supposed to be an upright lift, but most people don't execute it that way. And at some point I had a video in there of somebody trying to do a squat with the heels elevated, like significantly elevated, like slant board elevated, and the bar shifting. The bar still shifted forward, the knees still came back, and I use that as an example because at one point I got this criticism of heels elevated squatting, and I showed some people that were good at staying upright. They were like naturally strong in the quads, and then someone was like, well, of course when you elevate their heels that you're going to force their knees forward. And I was like, nope. If you got weak quads, your knees are going to stay back anyway. It don't matter how high your heels get, because it's about torque. Like it's physics. It's non-negotiable. You can't just force the knees forward. That doesn't change the torque requirements at the joint. So anyway.
and for people listening, instead of watching the YouTube, we were kind of talking about the squat position. If you want to think about the torso as like a pitcher of water, and athletes that are going to be a little bit more hip dominant are dumping that pitcher of water out on the ascent of a squat, to give you guys a little visual of what we were just explaining and talking about.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was just going to say, I also have content on this, guys. So YouTube, Instagram, you can see the videos.
Awesome.
Yeah, we're going to tag all those on the post too. So if you're listening to this, just go to the show notes and you'll be able to find those. A lot of good content. Again, I've been watching it for weeks now and still haven't gotten through everything. So there's plenty of info out there. How are we able to connect kind of what we do in the weight room and what we do to benefit our jumps to also benefit our speed? Are there a lot of carryover there?
Oh boy. Yeah. Okay. Big question.
Or too much carryover.
So I would say, as far as the weight room, like translating to sprinting, I would say it's pretty similar. Like you're trying to do largely the same things. It's, you're trying to increase your strength relative to body weight, and then you're hoping that translates to something faster than strength training. Definitely sprinting is farther away from lifting than, let's say, like a 2-foot jump, particularly like a standing vertical. So the distance between those things in terms of adaptations, in terms of contraction velocity, contact time, all these things. It is a bigger gap. So there might be, if there is a process of translating it, it might be longer. A longer period away from strength training if you are having to go through something like that. It's going to be a little bit more sensitive to fatigue as well. I think the max velocity is versus like 2-foot jumping. So you have to keep that in mind. But yeah, I would say it's still about like generating, you're trying to develop muscle power with your strength training for sprinting and for jumping. Jumping is going to be more reliant on that muscle power though. So, if I'm, like myself as a 2-foot jumper, for me, strength is very connected with my jump performance. I don't have a whole lot of disconnect there. So my squat goes up, my jump goes up. Like it's pretty direct. And I think, you'll see pretty consistently with jumpers, like the stronger, among the talented jumpers, the stronger they get, the higher they tend to jump. There's a pretty good connection there. Sprinting has this other component, and it's not that jumping doesn't have it, but again, it's just bigger with sprinting, of elasticity. And elasticity, people tend to think about like stretching with elasticity, but when it comes to a physical quality, we're actually talking about like the opposite of stretching. Like we're talking about like leg stiffness when you hit the ground. And so the term elasticity is more about like an elastic collision in physics, where you have a what is the word? Restitution of kinetic energy, a high restitution of kinetic energy, meaning like if you drop a bouncy ball at the ground, it comes back with almost the same kinetic energy, right? Whereas if you drop a baseball, it barely bounces up off the ground, So it's basically that concept applied to a foot contact in sprinting. And that's a really big contributor to sprinting. And it's, maybe it's a 20% contributor to jumping, but it's a 50% contributor to sprint, something like that, where it's a larger factor. So that's where you have, you're more likely to get somebody who's not that strong and great at sprinting than you are who's not that strong and great at jumping. Because the sprinter might have elastic talent, and that allows them, once they get moving, they're relying on that a lot, and that allows them to have a high max velocity, in spite of maybe not being exceptional in other areas. So like the fastest guy I've ever worked with, the fastest in terms of track, he ran, I think his best race was a 21:60 indoor 200, although he has a season coming up right now, but indoor 21:60, which is faster than the vast majority of athletes. I mean, basketball, football, soccer, like all these sports, very few people are running faster than maybe a 23 in the 200 in those sports. Like he's way faster than most of those type of athletes. He had about an 8-foot broad jump, like super average in that department. Maybe like 26, 27 standing vert, something like that. So in terms of muscle power, he was pretty average, but he had some bounce in his step, where he just effortlessly popping off the ground when he would sprint. And he was one of those like real chill sprinters too, where it's just, he looks like he's barely even trying. So yeah, that quality is a much bigger contributor to sprinting, and you're going to get then more variety in the like the other characteristics between good sprinters, because you might have people who are great broad jumpers and great sprinters, and you might have people who are very average broad jumpers and still great sprinters, and those are the ones that tend to be less of a fast starter but really great at top speed, are the ones that are like, they're specifically good at top speed because they're specifically have that elastic talent, whereas they may not be spectacular in terms of that muscular power. Am I getting off track here? Is that?
No, I'm
this is
making a
great.
ton of mental notes. So I'm thinking too that I'm about to listen to this like 4 more times. No, all great stuff.
Is that something we can teach? That relationship with the ground, that innate turnover ability?
I don't know about teach. I mean, I guess certainly like you could explain the concept, and maybe in like let's say like a 2-foot bouncing, like a RSI test, somebody could be bending their knees more and spending more time on the ground, and you could teach them like, hey, we want to pop faster, like don't bend your knees as much, be stiffer. So in that sense, you could teach the concept. I think the unfortunate, uncomfortable reality when it comes to sprinting is it's very hard to develop that quality in people that don't have it, to teach it or develop it. You definitely can't just like coach somebody into it. I think you can coach their foot contact, the way they touch the ground, right? So if someone comes in, they're a natural like heel striker or kind of like flat foot person, you'd be like, okay, we want to actually touch down with, the outside edge towards the ball of the foot area. And you could teach that foot contact, and then that will help them develop some of this elasticity while they're running over time. But yeah, I mean, like when you teach the foot contact, they probably aren't going to immediately get faster, but it's okay. We need to touch the ground like that 5 million times over the course of the next few years, and then you'll be faster, right? And so like for me, I start out that with shoeless warm-ups on the turf. So we're doing, whether you're jogging or doing low-level plyos or doing a speed drill or something, if you're shoeless, you're going to be touching down with the ball of the foot first. You may still put your whole foot on the ground depending on the exercise, but it's going to touch down ball of the foot first. So you're going to load those structures in your lower leg that we're trying to, develop that elasticity in. But yeah, I really think it is a physical thing you have to develop, and it's not so much taught. You create the stimulus to develop it, and then you just do it for, a lot of foot contacts over the course of years. And that's how you develop it. But it's not so much a technique. I know people like speed technique, sprint technique. People love to think like, they'll just have a stiff leg, use the technique. We'll do some stiff leg bounds, and that'll just make you faster. Maybe there's cases where people like sort of grasp it in a way, and then, just have to get off the ground fast, and then they like immediately get faster. But it's, I'd say that's a rare scenario. It's more of, well, their leg's not stiff because their leg's not stiff. Like they don't possess the things required to do that. And yeah, the development of it, obviously it's possible to some degree. People go have a track season and they get faster. And it may not be because they got a bunch stronger in the weight room or developed some other physical quality a bunch. Maybe it's, because you even see it in like middle distance people. Maybe it's because they ran a lot. They ran 25 miles a week in the early part of the season, along with some maybe 400 repeat conditioning, 200 repeat conditioning, and then they like competed in the 800 and the mile. There wasn't a whole lot of other training going on, maybe a little bit of lifting or something, but they probably weren't changing themselves a lot in that. But at the end of all that process, like their 200 meter is way faster. It's not just that they got endurance. Like they actually developed speed from all that running. It's because they bounced off the ground a million times. And on that point, as far as it being hard to teach, hard to develop, if we look at the ground reaction force in sprinting, the the elites, the high level sprinters, you know, like the, let's just say 10.5 meters per second or faster, you know, up to 12. Those people separate themselves in that force curve within about 0.03 seconds. That's where they make the difference. You know, you have this little hill, and theirs is just shifted so that they have a spike at the beginning of the hill. The back side of the hill is actually almost like it's identical to like a 9 meters per second runner. Yeah, I would look into like all of Ken Clark's research for that to see those pictures of those force curves. So yeah, it's, you know, it's, I don't know if we can teach be more forceful in the first 3/100ths of a second when you touch the ground. You know, I don't think that's so much teaching as it is gradually developing over time.
It's kind of like providing environments for athletes to find efficiency in their sprint mechanics that are their own.
Yes.
And I think that's some of the benefit from those longer middle distance sprints versus like sometimes what we're as strength coaches in love with is just 20s, 40s, and 30s.
Right.
If you're a middle school athlete, like that might not give you enough time to find an efficient, repeatable pattern that you can rely on later when you are running longer distances.
Exactly. And it's also just like not, it's just the workload isn't there, you know, like flying tens, good for your training your nervous system to like go all out. But very limited in terms of building that effortless bounce off the ground. Because a flying 10, it's like 5 foot contacts at max velocity, right? Whereas running 6 150s at 90%, it may not be max velocity, but now it's now it's 500 foot contacts at 90%, and that, you know, over the course of time, that's really more that's a more effective stimulus to develop that elasticity than flying tens is. So yeah, like you said, in the performance training world, like we love only full speed sprints, short distance, right? Because we hate conditioning, and we're not trying to be endurance athletes and all this stuff. Meanwhile, the track world is developing much faster athletes this whole time. And even, I mean, if you want to look at a good, let's say like a good high school level, there's a good high school 800 runner versus a good linebacker. Like the 800 runner is going to dominate a 200. Maybe he might even dominate a 100, depending on how talented that linebacker is. You know, he might not dominate the first 10 meters, but after that, a good 800 runner is actually fast. That, you know, and it's effortless. So, I think we got to find a balance there between training muscle power and training short, fast sprints, and also utilizing volume to build that elasticity and that efficiency. 100%. Yeah, you got people who only run 30 yards, like they don't need any efficiency. there's no development of that there. So absolutely. I think we got to find the balance between those things and understand also which athletes are going to respond better to different types of things. I know there's theories about like fast twitch dominant athletes and low training volumes and all these things. And that's, I'd say, definitely an area of still that we still need to learn a lot more in.
I think soccer is a good example of like that hybrid.
Sure.
Because they do have those short bursts, but they also are running forever, which is why I never played it.
Right. Yeah, and they do tons of conditioning.
Right.
But
they're still fast.
Throughout their career, they do tons of conditioning, and but then like the good ones are still fast in the end. Yeah. Their problem is sprint mechanics, because they run with the low feet because they're used to having a ball.
Yep.
And so then they need to learn to get away from the ball and just hit the track. Yeah, whole different thing.
Yeah. Why? Oh my gosh, why would they ever do that? So much great information there. Like I couldn't even keep up with taking my notes. So thank you for sharing all that. I do want to kind of transition to some questions that need less kind of thought for you.
Okay.
Kind of as we make our way out of here, and there's not a ton of continuity with these questions, just by the way, just to kind of wrap up some loose ends and want to hear some of your answers here. So, you mentioned 34 years old. You mentioned you really wanted to dunk at 13, was able to dunk at 14. And I remember specifically in my mind going through that same process. Who were some of your favorite dunkers growing up that you were watching and you were trying to emulate?
The air up there, Mr. 720.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. He did that.
Yeah, I think he was VHS tapes, or was he on? Did you see him on YouTube?
I think that was YouTube. I discovered him.
Yeah.
The And One mixtape tour. Yeah, he did an in-game 720, and I was like, man, that is goals for real. Him, and then the early Team Flight Brothers.
Oh yeah.
There was T-Dub, the 5'9" dude who could, get his head at the rim. Justin Darlington, he's been around for a while. He was a high jumper and then turned into a dunker. And I think he was like 6'3", but probably like 48-inch approach vertical, so like head above the rim. I mean, yeah, he did a back handspring into an East Bay dunk.
Oh.
So he had the ball sitting on the ground, like in the paint. I guess I get more like a round off. I don't know my gymnastics skills, but
okay, sure.
So he like runs in, does a round off. So like a cartwheel where you end up facing backwards at the end, and then off of that 2-foot plant at the end of that. Now he has the ball in his hands because he did the handspring right over the ball. He grabbed it on the way out. So he has the 2-foot landing on the end of that, and then jumps high enough off that 2-foot bounce to do a 180, first of all, turn around and face the rim, but also go under the legs and dunk. He did this in a dunk contest. not like he's in a gym and he gets 50 attempts at it. He did it in a dunk contest. There's a guy, Troy McCray, I remember the name. He was another dude. He was like 5'9". He did a standing East Bay from underneath the rim.
Any of the mainstream guys? Any like because like Steve Francis, like Allen Iverson was my guy growing up. So just the fact that he could dunk at 5'10" was the reason I wanted to do it. But then like Steve Francis, I watched obviously like Vince Carter, Tracy McGrady when they were doing this. Any of them? I mean, those mainstream
Vince
guys?
Carter for sure.
Yeah.
The Vince Carter windmill, man. That's
I think he's inspired a whole, probably decade at least of dunkers. There's a whole generation of athletes now who are dunking because of what Vince Carter was able to do.
Yes. And the elbow dunk, that's iconic and is like echoing through decades of social media right now,
Yeah.
Because I don't know how you even think to do that, but he was the one who he probably wasn't the first, but he was the one who made it, did it in the dunk contest, the NBA dunk contest.
And he talked about how it didn't get a ton of love, like when he did it live, and then people watched it on the replay, thought, shoot, this dude got his whole arm above the rim to be able to put it in.
You don't know what you're looking at when it first happens. It's just like confusion. Yep.
Oh, sick. And also for people who don't know the And One mixtape tour, you would go to what was Galleons when we were growing up, is now like Dick's Sporting Goods, but you would buy these basketball shorts that were way too expensive, like $40 or $50. You'd beg your parents way oversized. Yep.
Which was era appropriate though.
Yeah. Which is perfect for that time. And then you would buy these shorts, and then they would give you these VHS tapes, and you would go home and watch hours of just like pickup basketball. And where they had these iconic players who, now again, people our age still know about these people, but it's just something that doesn't happen anymore. Now you just find stuff on YouTube, but we had to go out and we had to buy these shorts, and you had to wear the shorts and buy the man. So that's great stuff. Okay. In kind of pursuit of continuing to be a good athlete, into our 30s and 40s, what are three things in the weight room or outside the weight room that you're going to try to do to continue to chase your athletic pursuits? And they can be like specific exercises, or they can be activities.
So first thing that comes to mind is just I'm going to continue to sprint, and sprint fast, not running miles out here. So yeah, continuing to sprint, and then continuing to dunk. I mean, those are the big ones for me, athletically. But then the challenge is, okay, you got to do those things and stay healthy. And that's way harder in my 30s than in my teens. And so I'm trying to think, what are my priorities in that department? I would say for me, I don't have hamstring injuries now. I have in the past, but definitely that's something that for sprinting, a lot of people need to think, okay, maybe I should strength train my hamstrings first and then add in sprinting later, and take a gradual approach. For me, I would say, I guess my knees are a little more at risk now that, I'm coming up on my 20-year anniversary of dunking next month. So, and I've, since I was 16, I've weighed at least 200 pounds. So that, that takes a toll. So I would just say, like, you're continuing to strength train the quads in various ways is a big one for me. Deep upright squats, pistol squats, hack squats, continue to do those things. Those would be my three big ones. But yeah, your big ones might be something else for those listening.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And and that's why we asked. So it's sprint, fast, jump, dunk, quad dominant squats. Excellent.
Yes.
Checking the box.
Yep.
High carb diet. Still your thing?
Yeah. So what's the evolution here? So, there's a lot of research about protein now and how it helps us stay lean, especially like if you're cutting, because it helps you maintain muscle in conjunction with strength training. So at some point I jumped on that and it was like, oh, well, I need to make sure I'm getting 200 plus grams of protein a day here. I think in the process, I was ignoring fat calories and never dramatically like got overweight, but somehow crept up to 235 a couple times. And that definitely had a negative impact on me athletically. And so that's like, all right, well, so just got to cut down some calories. Well, if you're doing high protein and you're cutting calories, the fat tends to come with the protein. Like a lot of meats, or the way meats are prepared, tends to come with a lot of fat, or a good amount of fat. So I would end up in a place where I had maybe like equal fat and carbs, and performance wise doing that, I'm just awful. I need carbs. It's just, and maybe it's because I was raised on them or what. Maybe there's something unique about me, but if I don't have a lot of carbs, I suck athletically. I'm weak. So I had to go to high carb, low fat. And that allows me, so I was 235, like maybe in like October, somewhere around there. No, not that recently. Maybe like September. Yeah, September probably. And it's what, January? So yeah, I've lost 15 pounds. I'm down to 220. But I've actually gotten a little bit stronger over that time doing high carb. So yeah, for me, that seems to be the formula to be able to manage body weight, but still perform well. Yeah, although holidays and birthday and dating. Oh, dating is the worst. Anyway, so it's thrown me off a little bit recently. but yeah, the high carb works for me as far as good energy for the workouts and good adaptation to the workouts. If I'm low carb, then my performance is bad. I think research wise, carb to fat protein or carb to fat ratio doesn't seem to matter for like weight loss quality or body fat and stuff like that. But for me personally, yeah, just strength and performance are just garbage if I don't have a lot of carbs. So that's how I ended up there.
And that's why people got to try things, right? Stop looking on for the easy answer on YouTube, or stop, trying to go to the magazine and see what your favorite celebrity is doing. Like, try things out, see how you perform, go back and forth, go on a couple dates, and then go back and, and then go back and try other things. James, that's what we'll name this episode, Daniel Bach. Like, geez, dating,
carbs, and dating.
Yeah, we'll figure that out. All right, last one here, and you really did a great job. And I was thinking of when you were saying, explaining the whole balance kind of conversation we had just a few minutes ago. We always wrap up with what are we missing in the strength and conditioning industry? And I wanted to ask you specifically, what are we missing in the jump, regarding jumping in the strength and conditioning industry? But you've really answered this question to me probably 4 or 5 times, but to kind of wrap everything up, is there something that you think, if we take as coaches or the athletes and we start doing today, there are things that can benefit us in the long run?
So the thing that I comes to mind is, we all know that we can develop strength relative to body weight and get, some type of result athletically, right? For some people, you're talented athletes, you're going to get dramatic changes across the board. They're going to jump higher, sprint faster, all these things. And it's going to be really easy. It's going to make for great testimonials about your training. Other athletes are maybe going to at least, okay, we'll get a broad jump record in there. Our weighted jumps maybe on the jump mat will go up. Maybe because we're more athletic, maybe because we're just manipulating our center of mass more on the jump mat. Either way, it makes for good social media posts, whatever. So, we know we can get some type of result from doing that. My question is, what other things can we do? Like, what other problems can we solve besides, oh, this person's not strong enough? What if we have someone who's a double bodyweight squatter and has a 26-inch standing vertical? Is getting stronger the answer there? I don't think it is. I think you're way disproportionately developed in the strength area and not the athletic area. And you need to find a way to raise this up, raise the other side of the spectrum up. And basically finding ways to do that is I think what we're missing. Or it's the place we need to keep trying to learn and keep trying to explore. Because I want to be able to take somebody who's not that talented and then let's get them a double bodyweight squat, but along the way, let's get a 45-inch vertical, And right now, I think if we take that person who's not that talented, give them a bodyweight squat, maybe they have a 33-inch vertical. They're still not that great, even though they get really strong. And so it's how can we take that person and try to make them more like the talented person? And so this is, it's a big thing I've talked about a lot. It's the let's go run track. Let's get that elastic volume, because so many people are lacking this quality. It's the let's use rest, because rest levels us up explosively. When you get fresh, things get faster, you get more explosive. Let's, in some cases, get away from strength training. Let's stop pulling the body in every direction and just pull it in one direction and let it shift shift explosive. And so I think the phrase I've used for that is get as athletic as you can at your current strength level. And so, yeah, I've seen some successes in this department in the jump science programs. I have levels 3 and 5 are very not strength focused, and you get classified into those levels by having somebody who is more so strong. So it's strength versus body weight is one of the tests, and then just your vertical divided by your height is one of the tests. And if those things are disproportionately developed, you go into one of these levels. And I've had some people who are, they go into level 5, and it's like, I gained 5 inches in my first couple months. I'm barely lifting weights. I'm doing like 2 sets of RDLs and a couple sets of calf raises per week, for like hamstring and Achilles. And I'm otherwise just like not lifting, and I'm getting spectacular results, so I've seen that happen. So I've had some success in that area, but it's still, what more? How can we be even better? Can I take myself being a heavy 2-foot jumper and having a jump training background? How do I level myself up on the track? It's probably not squatting. Well, unless I am under eating and getting weak, then maybe the squatting, returning to, but somebody who hasn't developed it through childhood, can we now develop it later? Can you change the athletic side of the spectrum and not just get everyone stronger and, sort of where their talents are, that's where they'll get better. And if they don't have the talents, they won't really get better, but we can still post that broad jump, what can we do on the athletic side of the spectrum to make less talented people more like talented people? That's kind of that's the pursuit.
Awesome, dude. People want the jump science program. People are sick of watching all of the clickbait material on social media and want to follow somebody with some substance. People want a YouTube channel to subscribe to get plenty of really good information. Where can people find you on all those platforms?
So jump.science on Instagram, jump.science, just type it into a web browser. Okay. .science instead of .com. It's just jump.science in a web browser. And then I'm Jump Science on YouTube as well. I think you just type in the phrase Jump Science, it'll pop up. Those are your 3 places. I'm not getting on TikTok. I refuse.
Yeah. Keep fighting the good fight.
Don't do it.
Keep fighting the good fight.
Either. We're not going there.
Daniel Bach, dude, thanks so much for being on Cutoffs and Coffee, episode 29. Thanks for wearing the cutoff. Thanks for dropping so much knowledge. Again, this, like I already mentioned, I took a ton of notes. I got to go back through and watch it 3 or 4 more times to be able to hear all the information and be able to digest all the information that you've given us. So thank you so much for your time, man. Everybody listening, continue to practice gratitude. Tell the people you love that you love them, and live your life stimulated. Episode 29, Daniel Bach in the books. See y'all next time.